Security VIP is the official podcast of the security industry, from manufacturers to end users and everything in between. Security VIP is your home for nothing but the truth.
You think you know me?
On this day, I see clear. You're listening to the Security VIP podcast, hosted by Taylor May, the official podcast of the security industry and home of nothing but the truth. Today on Security VIP, we feature the IceMan, Dave Clark of Velasea. Get ready for nothing but the truth.
Security VIP Nation, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Security VIP podcast, the official podcast of the security industry and your home for nothing but the truth. As always, I'm your host, Taylor May. And on today's episode, we're sitting down with my good friend and former colleague, Dave Clark, a.k.a. the IceMan of Velasea. Dave, welcome back to the podcast, brother. How are you doing today?
Hey, Taylor. It's good to see you again.
Good to have you back, man. It's been a while since we last featured you and the group from Velasea, but I think today we wanted to discuss a little bit more a topic that I always like to bring up. I know you like this topic too. You know, open versus proprietary systems. I talk about, manufacturers staying in their lane, sticking to one product, one focus, one market fit. However, we do have some systems out there that try to be Superman, try to solve every single problem. So I want to talk about that here in a second. But Dave, quick high level, man. Let's give us your background, your experience, and what you bring to the industry.
Well, Taylor, as you know, I come from a long term in the IT consulting world, doing a lot of kind of support and realm. Worked in the information security realm, and then in the access control world and supporting low voltage, and then most recently with you over at AnyVision doing kind of the facial analytics world. So I spent a lot of time in the physical security realm, and now excited to get back on here and kind of shade a little light into some corners that don't get talked about enough.
100%. And people always ask me, why, Taylor, do you call Dave the Iceman? And just to kind of recap again, people, when I was at AnyVision with Dave, I was a regional sales manager, so I would sell our facial recognition software. And if there was anything that went wrong with the actual install or deployment of the software, Dave was right there to fill in that gap to make sure nothing melted. So I sell the ice, Dave makes sure it doesn't melt. And that's exactly why I call him the Iceman, because he's pretty much the glue to this whole operation from a technical perspective, and also that customer experience perspective too, when it comes to actually deploying, computer vision technologies and artificial intelligence. So, let's get right into it, Dave. Open versus proprietary systems. I want to start with open ecosystems, kind of your open systems. So some VMS, some access control players that really come to mind that do this well, I think, in my eyes, are Milestone, Genetec, Salient, your typical VMS systems. On the access control side, you got your Mercury brands like the RS2s, your Linnells, your S2s, open options. That Mercury hardware always allows you to interoperate kind of different softwares and technologies. But what are the pros and what are the cons of having an open ecosystem in a client's environment?
Well, I think it's, flexibility and variety of choices, being able to grab the best components for what the solution is. If you're using an open VMS platform, you may have one camera manufacturer that's your general source across your facility, but you may have a special need and it lets you just grab a camera that's best of breed for that special need to work in that specific use case and not be locked into one manufacturer, which may have deficiencies in their line. Also gives you a choice of vendors. So if you need to grab something and they're out of stock, or the product you were using is end of life, kind of just gives you a lot more durability through the life cycle of your install, to not get locked into one brand, one supplier can be beneficial. It makes your life easier to quote everything when you're locked in, but it makes your, the install support side can get, it's a lot harder after, day one, month one, when you get to year 3, 4, 5, the landscape can change.
What are the cons though? There's definitely some pros with open ecosystems. Do you feel like there are any cons though with having an open ecosystem?
Oh, definitely that lock-in. So, if somebody you're working with gets acquired, all of a sudden the pricing structure changes, you're committed. There's an exceptional barrier to switching something out. Look at your access control system for example. If you're locked in and say running Software House and you want to switch to Genetec, you have to replace all your panels, probably your readers and your card stock, the labor alone plus your material to switch something out, you're the barrier to moving it and taking it out of your facility to upgrade to something newer, running very old technology for a very long time. And that's why a lot of people today in the access control world are running technology that's pretty insecure, but it's convenient for what they already have deployed.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was funny, man. I made a video today actually about a comparison about this topic that we're talking about right now. I spoke about, I think there's too many Supermans in this industry and not enough Tom Brady's. And what is Tom Brady good at, Dave? Football. That's all he is good at, right? But like Superman, he's the one all be all. He can solve every single problem. So do you agree with that analogy? I mean, do you think there's too many one-stop shops here?
I mean, there are that definitely, trying to do everything can be problematic, but just picking one vendor for your entire slate. I mean, it might be good to bet on that horse, but you're not going to win every time. And sometimes it's better to have a little diversity. I mean, look at what's going on in the supply chain today with everything getting constrained and things getting delayed. If you only have one supplier, it's not going to let your guys go out and get your project completed if you only have one source and one product. It doesn't let you really, having the best of breed specific solution for each of your customers' needs, and then being able to integrate them. That's the other thing, is these open platforms allow you to tie all your stuff into it, because there is that battle for the screen in your security room of having everything tied into one place is still pretty nice.
Best in breed was a term you just brought up. I love that terminology, man, because that's exactly what we need is manufacturers that stay in their lane and focus on one single product and then interoperate with those open ecosystem environments to kind of give that overall holistic approach from a security angle, right? When it comes to solving these challenges. So, Dave, if you were a client, I got to ask you, man, let's put your client hat on right now. What VMS system would you choose, and what access control system would you choose with an open ecosystem in mind?
Oh, I mean, I probably would just go with one that's all in one slate. Either the Milestones or the Genesec of the world. You can just deploy one system. You don't have to have two different things. You have one thing in, and you can see every time somebody walks in the door, your events are in one place. That's kind of my personal favorite. And just keeping something that's also got, I want to look 10 years down the road. Who's still going to be here? So, a Milestone plus, open cameras, Hanwha access on top of Mercury would give me, flexibility that if I didn't like the solution 5 years from now, I could change.
Future proofing, man. That's exactly what you're doing right there. I love that because, Milestone, Tim Palmquist had him on the podcast multiple times. He talks about the power of open, the power of interoperating. Genetec, another great platform when you can do everything with that open ecosystem in mind. You've got the security center, then you have your Synergist access control system, which is Mercury backed as well. Again, if you're not happy with it, 3, 4 years, 5 years down the line, you can interoperate that without ripping and replacing panels. Love to hear that. And also the open architecture of the cameras, man. Axis, Hanwha, just talk about some great open architecture cameras right there that allow you to actually interoperate other technologies too, especially analytics. Talk about the camera aspect too.
Oh yeah, I mean, cameras are an interesting platform where you can get really locked in. That some people have really made their cameras only all their feature sets really available to their own software to talk to the camera. I think Avigilon's a prime example of this. Just one of those things where they only offer a small portion of their toolkit available to third-party applications trying to connect to their cameras. They prefer to just keep it to their own walled garden. And that's, once you put walls up, it's great if you're on the inside, but it's hard to get over the wall and see what's going on the other side.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned Avigilon. I think Verkada is another camera manufacturer too that kind of locks you in as well.
Yeah, Verkada was another really good example of, a solution that was an all-in-one single source solution with the cameras to their back-end software. But if you had a Verkada deployment and you're concerned about their current state due to some of the issues they've had with their published incident, you can't switch. You have to rip and replace. And that's labor labor intensive and capital intensive on replacing the equipment.
Yeah, 100%. If y'all didn't hear that news about Verkada, I think it was probably about 60 days ago, a couple months ago. Obviously some credentials were released, camera views and angles from their clients were exposed. Not a good Not a good situation to be in if you're Verkada.
No, I'm not a huge cloud proponent because of that. If your data leaves your facility, it's tough to keep track of it sometimes.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, I mean, same question though, since we're talking about Verkadas and the Vigilons, let's talk about that proprietary system now, because you see it in the market though. You still see clients go this route and go the proprietary route. So why is that? What's the pro though for going proprietary?
What can be missing, you may already have a deployment you're adding on to your existing deployment. If you're a software house access control system and you've already got 100 plus facilities on it, you're going to continue to stay on the platform because you're committed to it. And switching over isn't exactly something that's an easy project. And what's the value add of leaving? Is the solution meeting your needs? If it does everything you need it to do, there's no need to move over. It's also for smaller deployments. It makes a lot of sense. You don't need the complexity and the flexibility of an open system may not scale if you're only deploying 20 cameras or 10 doors, something that's ease and efficient for your installer to be able to get it in and be, again, it's all time is money. How easy is it to deploy and stand up and meet people's needs?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, those smaller scale, I think deployments make sense, especially proprietary. I mean, my wife, Dave, but she went to a tanning salon a couple of weeks ago, and they had Verkada cameras at this tanning salon. There's probably 4 or 5 cameras there, but that's a small scale deployment, which maybe make more sense in that kind of environment, right?
That's your typical cloud solution right there. Is just a couple of cameras, get them set up, and then bring them back to central monitoring for sure. Just, is it secure?
Yeah, and that's the most important question nowadays, especially around the not even just proprietary, but the whole cybersecurity thing going on right now too. I'm sure you heard that news as well.
That's another thing. If you're in an open platform, you're going to have a lot more eyes looking on your solution and a lot more ways to validate it, make sure you can maintain security. If you're closed and you're not participating in a large breadth of the marketplace, and you're not open and using industry standards that are being validated for security, you're exposing yourself to breaches that may not get noticed or other security problems. We say that everything's got a vulnerability somewhere. It's just how many people are looking at it and how quickly can you have the resources to turn around and patch it. If you're a smaller kind of closed source company, you're not going to be as nimble as if the camera manufacturer can just pitch their vulnerabilities in the your software vendors looking at their side, you have multiple people looking at it to make sure you're covered.
Yeah, no, 100%, especially with all the backdoor stuff that's happened now with the cybersecurity realm, and not even here in US, but internationally too. We've seen some of these concerns happen. But you mentioned some of these cons, Dave. I mean, what's the recommendation though for companies like a Vigilon, Verkada, and on the access control side, Secure, obviously software houses, proprietary system? What's the recommendation to combat those cons that you just addressed?
Well, it's kind of using, one of the things is the complexity of the products. So if you're an integrator in the market today, you're just overwhelmed with the breadth of product, and you may decide to just pick your, solution just because it's easier to order off of one menu instead of going someplace where there's a lot of pages in the menu, and it gets kind of complicated to, find your solution. And that's where I say, use your suppliers. Work through other sources of, knowledge to help you pick best of breed solutions and kind of tie them together, because you're a solution integrator, but just kind of getting a breath of realizing that things are interoperable and kind of just getting having a few different things in your stable, but you're not going to have a huge amount of variety that the market provides. You just have to pick, okay, these are the couple of camera manufacturers I like, but if you have a bit of flexibility, then you have that ability to change or follow new trends. There's a lot of things coming out in the analytics space that, we're going to see a lot of new cool things and some major changes in the next few years. But if you have standards compliant equipment, then you can just stick it in, run a quick demo. As you and I both know, we've shown up and you're like, if you have open cameras, we can get a demo up and running in no time. Whereas versus having to pull new cable, deploy new cameras to add a new solution, it kind of just sticks you into what you're stuck in yesterday, not preparing for tomorrow.
Dave, I'm glad you brought up analytics because this was actually a question I wanted to ask you as a side question. And I want to get your thoughts on this, man, because obviously, I work for an AI company now that specializes in one single analytic, but now we see camera manufacturers throwing in AI technologies or AI computer vision object classifier technologies now in their camera system. What are your thoughts on camera manufacturers trying to embed these AI analytics?
Well, I think it's really cool to be able to start leveraging the processing power that we, taking the kind of high-end processing power you have in your phone today and kind of pushing it out to the edge of the camera allows you to do a lot of neat things, but it also highlights, is that camera an open platform where they have a store and you can pick different analytics to load onto your camera? Or are you committed to one platform and only their solutions you can add to said, smart camera at the edge? The technology is really cool. The unfortunate part is some of them can be quite expensive. Hanwha's done a nice thing. I think they've locked their smart cameras cost as much as their old high-end cameras used to. So they're kind of holding the price point, which is a cool advantage for them on the market. But it's your cameras are going to be out there for a really long time. So while it's very interesting to see the analytic capabilities, your average camera deployment is 5 to 7 years that camera is up. It's going to be interesting to see what that technology looks like. As things keep getting faster every year, what's that going to look like as it ages?
Yeah, that's my concern too. Not only that, but what's the upgrade path 5 years from now on that camera? But are those analytics embedded in those cameras? Are those trained neural nets? How well do those neural nets work on those cameras? Because a camera manufacturer doesn't really specialize in AI. And then whatever, one day they wake up and say, hey, we want to offer license plate recognition. We want to offer people counting. How well trained are those analytics though?
I think they're pretty well trained. It's a nice thing is everything boils down to there's only a couple of suppliers for a lot of the back end of the cameras. So a lot of the cameras in the market are running some of the same processors. So when you get a breadth of that, it's less things you're actually designing for than individual camera manufacturers. So it's just like you're making a solution for one type of chip, and that may cover a couple of camera manufacturers. But everybody's implementation is different. And how much lifting do you want to do out at the camera, and would you rather do at the back end? It's much easier for us to, upgrade an analytics server and upgrade, 200 cameras worth of equipment in one box being traded out versus updating 200 smart cameras may be a bigger project.
And I think we can come to terms that just a general consensus that we would rather deploy any kind of AI or any kind of analytics on-prem versus cloud. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's again, keeping the amount of data you're lifting. It's a lot of data to take all your video back to the cloud. If you can just take the metadata, you're kind of talking about, basically a shipping container or just sending a postcard back.
I mean, the comparison I make though is like these real-time analytics. What is the bandwidth consumption and latency issues that you have to, portray with the real-time analytic versus maybe like a forensic style analytic? I could see maybe cloud in that scenario, but real-time, it's got to be on-prem, I feel like.
It depends on what kind of data and where your deployment is, but you'll find, your sensor-rich deployments, it's just better to keep it on-prem because it's too much effort. We're not at the bandwidth level where you can ship, thousands of gigabytes in and out every month at a reasonable cost. And then security. It's easier to keep, a lot of our security today is just physical segregation, making sure that data doesn't leave your premises without you knowing.
Yeah, 100% security, and obviously the $1 million question, right? How much is it going to cost me? I mean, that's always on a topic of mine. But let's get
Amazon will get you because remember, they only get you to save it there, but they also get you to go back and look at it. So, the double billing for some of the providers is pretty painful.
Big pain to swallow on that one. Big pill to swallow on that one. Okay, so let's go back to open proprietary for a second. I think we come to, you and I definitely are in alignment when it comes to this topic. But what do you think the market favors right now? Do clients favor an open over proprietary? Or you think it's like, what's the percentage? If you put this in percentage side, what do you think it is?
I think it's definitely moving towards open. I mean, look at just at the back end, we have a huge movement towards open source software on all of our platforms are running on open source platforms just to give us the flexibility to be able to design the tools that we need. Look at the prevalence of Linux is really taking over the enterprise compute market. Even we're starting to see VMS systems running on Linux, just, being able to abandon some of those Windows legacy costs and overhead and making things, run. But I think definitely, with Mercury's, stepping forward, I've seen solutions where I've gone in to quote a design and they've already picked the panels. They haven't picked the software vendor yet, but they already have the hardware set. A lot of consultants are going that way. Yeah.
And I would imagine working on a open VMS server versus a proprietary server is probably a little bit easier, huh?
Well, I mean, you can, on the value end, you can save, many hundreds of dollars by just, it depends what it needs to do, but do you need a lot of feature set that's not prevalent to something that's basically an appliance? Remove some of the overhead you don't need.
Yeah, no, that's a valid point. We already touched on this question, but I asked, do verticals matter for either one of these systems? And I think we talked about proprietary as more your small scale deployments, and your open and more of your enterprise large scale deployments. I mean, any particular vertical though that you would see each one of these falling in?
No, it depends on, the verticals are really, varied. I don't think you can, the small business is starting to get, everybody, Amazon and all the home consumer products are starting to nibble at that. So you're starting to see an erosion at the small end of the market with just, cloud cameras that you can set up really easy. The smaller systems that are professional grade hardware are kind of disappearing because it's just too easy to set up a couple of Wi-Fi cameras and be done with it. The medium to large businesses are, continuing to roll with the way they've been going, but we're seeing a lot of people stepping away from, some of the legacy, VMS platforms due to lack of feature set. I mean, the openness of the Milestone type Genetec type platforms, they can just integrate the new technology that didn't exist 18 months ago. It's in there. And, you've got video, security, access control, intrusion, fire, everything in one place. That one-stop shop, single pane of glass view is where the future's at.
So Dave, what you're saying is my P3245 cameras and my Milestone VMS that I'm installing on my house is overkill.
Yes, especially since you're asking me to come over and help you set it up.
Hey, I tell you what though, I love open architecture. Velasea and Dave and the team hooked me up on the 3245 cameras from Access. I love Access. I love Hanwha too. Hanwha. I mean, that's a great system too. And obviously you can't go wrong with the, X-Protect from Milestone as well. So I definitely agree with that. I think it's a little bit overkill, but you know what? It's my house and I think it's going to look good at the end of the day. So,
yep. No, it'll be, a fun deployment to help you execute that one, so you can actually test some of the products we're talking about, day to day. But that's, in my job as a solutions architect, having freedom, that's the beauty of the freedom is we can be creative with the hardware. When we design a server or whatnot, in the x86 architecture is fairly open, so we can switch out, different vendors of servers. And provide a solution to you to meet your price point. And it doesn't have to be a specific manufacturer. But you look at some of the other people who are able to get, much more performance with, closed architectures, that have been out there. The financial world is run on systems that are not, commonly used in compute the world around. But it's different. You'll see specialized systems for specialized workloads. But you'll see, the generality of just being able to switch out, Intel, AMD are pretty much interchangeable, for a lot of times, being able to grab Radeon graphics or NVIDIA, those things being interchangeable for some workloads has really been allowed technology to get where we're at today. I mean, you're on a PC, I'm on a Mac.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, what you said is spot on. I mean, and I think, to your point, I think this industry is moving towards more an open ecosystem and open architecture. I think clients understand that. And the thing about it, man, is like clients are getting smarter nowadays. And like I talk about, obviously, going through a security integrator is important. That's always been the lifeblood of the industry. But these clients nowadays, man, they're pretty intelligent when it comes to this new technology.
Yeah, everybody's demands are going higher. Everybody's becoming more savvy, and it's that full integration of everything from, talking to your phone to talking to, what do they ask? All the different layers that are going to come up with it, but that people are wanting to get more involved with their solution. But it's definitely just empowering. The integrator today, it's more complex, definitely needs a bit more support, and we're here to walk them through. Is they'll become more essential because they're able to step into building automation. There's a lot of new, all this equipment's related, stepping into more and more verticals to allow them to offer more and more services to their clients.
Yeah, 100% more of that project-based kind of selling approach with those integrators, and with these new SaaS RMR models. Obviously, it provides a different portfolio now of new product lines that these customers are realizing, as well as integrators. So, Dave, final question, man. This is kind of an off question. We talked about open versus proprietary, but what's the legacy of Dave Clark that you want to leave here in the industry, man? I gotta leave that last question to you.
I started, battling into this because one of my first positions was at Sonus, and we were breaking into the access control market with another hardware platform. And, coming in and learning, how proprietary everything is with, high frequency proximity cards and some of these really locked systems where you're trying to come in from the outside to provide a new solution. So that's kind of, my experience across the thing, but I think, providing people with that experience of, we are here to be kind of the concierge to help you wander through all these products. That's kind of my expertise, is bringing all my specific knowledge of all the different products I've worked to my new role of being, this stuff works really well together. How can I help you get it in your hands so you can bring it to your customers?
That consultative knowledge, man, you can't beat that at the end of the day. And especially with your experience and your tenure, Dave, with the industry, it speaks volumes of your credibility and kind of what you bring to the table. And will the IceMan be at ISC West next month? I
will be at ISC. Looking forward to getting back to Vegas. Have spent a lot of time there, so it's been a while. It was actually, I was sitting with my bags packed, about to walk out the door when we got shut down with the travel halts when the strip closed last year. So I haven't been back since.
I'm looking forward to it, man. And believe it or not, Dave and I actually met at ISC East when we joined AnyVision together. That was the first time I met Dave, and we've been friends and colleagues ever since. So always a pleasure, man, to have you on. And if people want to get more involved with you, Dave, what's a good contact, email, phone number? How can people get more involved with you?
I said over at Velasea.com or dave.clark@Velasea.com.
Awesome, man. We've heard it first, Dave. IceMan, thank you so much, man, for hopping on today. And for those that have questions, comments, or concerns, you can email me at info@securityvip.net. Once again, that's info@securityvip.net. You can watch this episode of Dave and I on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe to our channel. Listen to us on Spotify. And for all the recent announcements about my podcast series, make sure to check us out on LinkedIn. And don't remember, next month, July 19th, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m., I will be hosting a live panel discussion at IC West in Sands, room number 404. Come stop by. Let's hang out, have a couple drinks together. Always a good time at that show. And make sure, guys, to stay in tune for our next episode release. Stay safe.